Alright, Bloodborne. You're going down! Bloodborne. For those of you familiar with the Souls series, you are well aware of Hidetaka Miyazaki's work. No, not that Miyazaki. This Miyazaki. It was quite a few years ago I was introduced to Demon Souls. The game is relentless and unforgiving. It was the first time since the early 90s I felt actual punishment for dying in a game. Then Dark Souls appeared. It was a spiritual successor to Demon Souls. In my opinion, it was far more accessible and easier than Demon Souls, but the world felt much more engaging, with almost every area being interconnected. And now, Bloodborne. Each game was quite different from the last, with similar qualities, such as the currency and level up system, and the co-op PvP gameplay. Bloodborne is no exception. Though while the latter games punish a player for being rash and button mashing, Bloodborne takes a new approach. Kill or be killed. Be aggressive. Obviously the Souls games are a base for Bloodborne, but in no way would I say that it is interchangeable with Dark Souls and Demon Souls. Both Dark Souls and Demon Souls play very much the same way, whereas Bloodborne feels entirely different. First off, it's faster paced. Unlike the older games, you are encouraged to be offensive, as enemies tend to mob you if you try to play defensively. Even when you take damage, if you are offensive, you have a chance to heal it all back. There is also a significant lack of armor and weapons in this game compared to the past Souls games, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. For while I fell in love with finding a new, powerful weapon, every weapon is a viable weapon in Bloodborne. You can play the entire game with your starting weapon and not have a problem. It's all about preference. Armor has slight differences as well. Really, it's about subtle changes in the defense of specific sets. For example, if you're going against an enemy that uses fire, equipping the Charred Hunter set provides great fire resistance. If you're fighting some fearsome dark beast, choose Henrique's set. It provides ample defense against electricity. Other than that, fight in what you're comfortable in, as the game doesn't have an equip weight, so none of the armors will affect your movement. Miyazaki has gone on record stating that his inspiration for these games were based off of books he read as a child. He would read books that are way above his reading level, and he would fill in all the gaps with his own imagination, effectively co-writing the stories. That created a really unique experience for him, and he wanted to convey that with these games. By having a story, but only giving the players a small broken fragment of it, you allow the players to create their own conclusions, and effectively co-writing the story. In fact, huge communities online have been created just to discover the lore in these games. Bloodborne. There's already a lot to extrapolate from the name alone. It isn't born as in birth, it's born as in carried in. Something is being carried in blood. In the first couple hours of the game, you are introduced to Yharnam, a Gothic-era city, plagued by a horrid curse. First, it was the Ash Blood, a sickness that ailed the city until a church with a miracle cure came along. The healing church offered a blood with healing properties that could cure any illness, so people traveled far and wide to Yharnam for this miracle cure. But soon, those given the cure became beasts of their former selves, and with the rise of these beasts, came the need for the hunt. Hunters hunt the beasts by night. You are a hunter that has come to the city in search of something. The Pale Blood. The game's story is rich and deep, with clear allusions to H.P. Lovecraft and Bram Stoker. The game violently deviates from what is the norm of the Souls games. But with that deviation is what sets it apart. I find the story much easier to uncover than in the Souls games, but the game itself felt harder. time and time again, I felt I was being punished for being a Souls player, being too familiar with the Souls controls. I can't tell you how many times I've healed instead of activating my trick weapon. During my first playthrough, I kept asking myself whether I liked Dark Souls or Bloodborne better. I kept thinking about it over and over again. I couldn't decide. Due to their different playstyles and themes, it's hard to compare them. If you enjoy slow, methodical, and defensive gameplay, you'd enjoy Dark Souls more, as the game is designed for you to observe your environments and enemies and study their movements and act accordingly. However, if you prefer fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping action, look no further than Bloodborne. It doesn't mean the game has lost the environmental situations that made Dark Souls so amazing. I'm only trying to stress that a lot of the gameplay has been streamlined into the action. It's much more economic than Dark Souls. Gaining little bits of lost health back by attacking saves you from having to withdraw to heal. Having a gun to stun an enemy makes more sense than having a shield that only blocks an attack. You fully prevent an attack and create an opening. You don't have to worry about equip loads and roll speeds, so you can focus on honing your skills. This game is unlike past Souls games, and it feels smooth. Although the game is amazing, it has flaws. For example, the camera in some of the fights with the larger enemies end in a ridiculous tornado of motion, as the camera can't decide where to sit. This can end in almost certain death, as the game relies on the player's meticulous and precise actions. Another example is certain features in the game, such as Frenzy and Beasthood, are never really given any clear indication of what they do, and thus it takes hours of experimenting or playing to figure them out. Despite the flaws of this game, it's fantastic. It's filled with style and lore, and some of the most intense battles I've ever played in a video game. For those of you wondering what the Pale Blood is, the game never really tells you. But if you delve deep enough, you can find out.
O Flora, O little ones, O fleeting will of the ancients, let the hunter be safe, let him find comfort, and let this dream, his captor, foretell a pleasant awakening. Be one day a fond, distant memory.